Hey guys, welcome to the breakdown and discussion video for my speed painting The Last Stand. This was actually an entry to Jazz's competition of the month. He runs a competition every month with a theme. This theme was Dragons versus Kittens, or Kittens versus Dragons, and I kind of did a video like this for a previous painting that I did, which actually was also an entry to one of his competitions, where I went through the final Photoshop piece and kind of discussed each layer that I'd made on it. Whereas this time I thought what I'd actually do is try and discuss it live as it is being painted in front of you, so I can hopefully pick up on the things that I'm doing and kind of break them down a bit easier. So at the moment, what I'm doing is sketching. It's all very, very rough at this stage. I'm just trying to block things out and try and work out exactly the composition of the piece and the characters, and get some kind of a feel for where I'm heading with it. And I kind of ended up with this sort of fantasy scene with the kind of your classic four heroes. So you've got your mage character, your barbarian warrior character, a thief or a rogue character there on the left with the crossbow, and then the guy at the back would, I guess, traditionally be like a dwarven character or something, so another warrior. I kind of didn't know how to fit him in with the others, so I just kind of I ended up just giving him braids and a warhammer in the hopes that it kind of worked. And it does. Each one of the cats or kittens, they started off as kittens and became cats. Each one was a different breed. The one in the center is actually based on a lynx, wild cat. The one on the right, the mage character, was a Persian. And if you ever need cheering up or a good laugh, then I definitely suggest going over to Google Images and searching for Persian kittens, because they have the derpiest eyes, and I spent about 10 minutes just giggling to myself over them. So that's those two. The one on the left was your average Tom tabby cat, silver tabby. Turned into a female character as well, which was different, wasn't expecting. Just quickly break, at some point I'm going to change the entire angle of the piece, which I wasn't expecting to do straight away. But as it kind of took form, I thought, you know what, this might look better at a bit of a Dutch angle on the slant like that, which you saw me just do there. And I think it definitely framed the picture a lot better. Going back to what I was saying before, the guy at the back, probably again a tabby cat, ginger tabby, or maybe an American long hair. I guess with the braids and stuff, maybe long hair would work. The dragons, the one that I'm painting right now, I had a lot of difficulty trying to figure out where he was in the piece. I'd started off with the sketch, I had 5 dragons I think, and took it down to 4. The guy at the back on the right turns into a blue dragon, and he still doesn't quite sit comfortably with me. So that's interesting. Getting onto the line work now. At this point, it had taken me about 3 hours for the sketch. 3 hours for a sketch is unheard of. Generally, it takes me maybe 20 minutes, half an hour to get out a character. But in this particular case, I guess because I had more than one character, it just took me a lot longer. In fact, the line art took another 3 hours on top. So before I even got to colour, painting had taken me 6 hours, which that's almost the time that it takes me to do a complete render normally. So with the sketching, this part, the line art, it's still fairly sketchy at this point, but it does give me a chance to kind of go in and add more detail to the characters, some interesting points that I can draw focus on and so forth, and just lets me explore the character a little bit more than the sketch before I start adding colour. So things like adding the rings onto their fingers, and the sort of the runes and stuff to the book that the mage character is holding, and things like the arrows and the cuffs and so forth on this character. I really wanted to give all the characters a very unique feel to them, so that they all definitely were different characters, had their own individual personalities. I didn't want them all to be just generic cats. The dragons turned out really well. I'm really happy with certainly this one on the left and the one down on the bottom right. I really enjoy drawing dragons, actually. I think I'm going to have to draw some more on this channel at some point. Just because, again, each one, I wanted them to be different and unique in their own way. So this one had the big horns coming out the back of his head and like the snake scales going down his back. This guy has the horns, the ridge across his eyes, and kind of I don't know what you call them, sort of fins coming off the back of his head. The one on the top left has like an armored nose plate thing, and this guy obviously has the big spikes coming out the side of his head as well. He's in an interesting pose. I'll give him that. I feel it doesn't quite make sense in the framing of the picture. In my mind, he kind of, going off the side of the picture to the right, his body curves back down towards us. So he's almost in like a question mark kind of shape. With that in my head, his position makes sense. But just alone that framing of him, I think I could have done a better job in kind of getting him to sit better in the picture. At the moment, it kind of looks like he's lunging at the characters. I didn't want that. I just wanted him to be snarling or roaring at them. This guy, he was the one that I started off liking the most, and then as the painting progressed, I liked him less and less. The background, I wasn't really sure about the setting that I wanted to put them on, whether I wanted them outside or in like a dungeon or something, which is why I kind of got a bit of both going on in the background. So there's like flagstones and stuff on the floor. I thought maybe they were out in ruins or something. I ended up just going with like a green grass kind of background. I didn't want to draw focus too much away from the characters. And that worked out for the best, I think. I think if I'd spent another few hours working on the background, then this piece would have just got out of hand. As it was, it took me 21 hours to complete it, which is an obscene amount of time to spend on one painting. But, these things happen, and if you're in the zone, then you carry on with it. But, like I say, it took me 21 hours, and I finished at 3 o'clock in the morning of the 21st of May. The deadline was the 22nd at the time. That actually changed later, but that's a different story entirely. 3 o'clock in the morning. It was not only 3 o'clock in the morning, the 21st of May, but it was also my birthday, and I really wanted to go to bed. So that's the story of that. But like I say, the background kind of changed a lot. Here I am. I'm just going through now. I've started adding the color to them, just the local color, the base color of each of the cats, and I'm going through and also adding in the markings and stuff onto their fur, so that when I come to doing the shadows and the lighting and rendering them out properly, that's all there, and that should just sit in nicely with all the color as I do it. So it's beginning to start taking shape at this point. I think you can probably start seeing where my brain was going with it, as it were. I want to point out at this moment in time the war axe, the warhammer that the ginger cat is carrying, was never happy with it. It started badly and it just continued badly, but I couldn't think of how to improve it. Warhammers aren't a weapon that I've ever used in any painting or any context, in fact. Even when I'm playing video games or anything like that, I never used the war axe, so I have no experience. So maybe it's something that I should should check out. It's more weaponry at some point. This guy, you'll notice he also has a cat collar hanging off his tooth. I wanted to add more kind of cat themed things to the painting. Ended up not doing. In fact, that cat collar almost entirely disappears in the final piece, which is a shame. But even the mage's staff, originally I wanted it to have like a ball of wool, kind of ball of yarn type feel to it, which it kind of sort of still does, not to any great extent, but it's still there. This guy, at this point I was playing with the colour of the overall piece. I decided I wanted it to get colder towards the top of the painting and start really hot at the bottom. So the two dragons at the bottom, went with a red one for the main focus, and then the orange one to the right as well, just to keep that warm feel towards the bottom of the picture. And then I had the green one up in the top left and the blue one right at the back, and that was the one which was right at the back, ended up pushing it out of focus, so the eye was less drawn to it, and it was much colder part of the picture. And I think it kind of worked out. I think I could have played with that theme a little more as I went on, and I kind of didn't, I don't think. But it's still there, and I think it works well with the overall composition. Now I'm going through and adding the shadow details. So this is on a multiply layer, and all I'm doing is I'm selecting the local color in that area, taking it to the color wheel and just desaturating it quite a lot, so it's almost grey, but not quite. There's still some of the color there, and then painting it into the shadow areas, the larger shadow areas, with like I say, a multiply layer, and that works, I find, really well for creating shadow. I'm also using it just to start breaking up some of the fur in areas, helping to add to that whole furry cat feeling. So each time I move on to a different local colour, I'm switching that colour to a different one. As something that I never used to do with these paintings, but I've found recently that it really helps to sell the overall piece if you're using the local colour in that area. You'll notice occasionally I'm switching back the local colour off entirely. That's so I can reselect that same shadow layer. So I've got a white layer at the bottom, which is currently hidden, painting on a grey background. If I switch on that white layer and hide the local color, then I get the pure shadow color. So if I drop it for whatever reason, I can just pick it straight back up. So it's really useful with the shadows, I find, for helping create the illusion of clothing and cloth. You'll see here I'm using it a lot to kind of add a little bit of a wavy texture to the whole thing. Here I'm just adding in a quick background, very, very basic background. You can see the colours that I was talking about there, the blue in the back and the very warm colours towards the front, just so that I could, whilst I was painting it, I had some idea of where things were going to go and how they were sitting in the overall piece, so I had some idea of context. So now I'm moving on to the dragons. I'm doing the same thing, just going through with the multiply layer, selecting the local colour, desaturating it, and just painting on that multiply layer to get the shadows and the scales and so forth. And this guy, the scales worked out really well. It's all I was doing here, I wasn't finding any particular route. I was basically just stippling the brush on in places, and especially towards the back, like an area like this where it's not very well lit and it's just the very fronts of the scales and the ridges in its skin that are hitting the light. It works really well to cast big shadows behind it, and it really adds a lot of depth and texture to the piece. I really like the effect that it has. You'll see that I use that same thing here. I've just done the exact same stippling effect. I actually increased the brush size quite a lot there, so I could cover a large area. It's a kind of a chalky brush that I picked up from somewhere that at the edges has a very kind of stipply effect. And I tried to use that on that orange dragon in the back. It didn't quite work, so I went back and did the same kind of stippling effect and just followed the back ridges of where I had it snarling and stuff to add some depth to it. Again, this guy, I changed the shadowing a lot on this guy's face, and we'll come back to that in a second, just so that it really brought out the snarling features of the dragon. And now I've gone through and I'm starting to add lighter areas. So this is on another layer. I use a lot of layers when I'm painting, and I've done the same kind of thing. I've taken a local color and I've just shifted up and to the right on the color swatch and warmed it up with the slider to the left. So I've just moved the slider up a bit and warmed the entire thing up so that it's got that the light is being cast from the fire, so it's much more of a yellow light that's hitting the cat in places. So there's the fire from his torch that he's holding, which is lighting him up from one direction, and then you've got the light from the dragon. The fire from the dragon is lighting him up from another. So he had a lot of light hitting him. This the female character had not as much, but enough. It really I really like this one's cloak. It really worked well with the whole effect. I enjoyed doing that. The sword I came back to again and again. I wasn't sure how I wanted to go about doing it. I actually had to go and look up some reference pictures for like fire hitting metal, because metal I'm happy with. How fire affected it, that lighting on the metal, I wasn't too sure about, but you'll see that later when I come back and I focus just on the sword for a short period of time. So again, here we go with the light. Selected the local color, warmed it up, and slid it up a bit on the slider. Again, it's really added a lot of depth to the features of the dragon. I'm really happy with the results, especially on that orange dragon, and a little bit on the red one. The top of the staff there, I wasn't too fussed about getting everything absolutely perfect about it, because I knew I was going to hide it a lot behind some light and possibly kind of fade it out a little bit. Not fade it out, but fuzz it out, push it out of focus a bit, just because it was behind so much light. I didn't want to draw too much attention to it. So that's why I've not really focused on trying to get everything perfect, especially around the head area on it. Again, you can see me coming through and just adding that light to this guy. And again, I'm really I'm not so happy with the mouth, but again, similar reasons to the staff. I knew it was going to be hidden a lot behind the light from the fire, so I wasn't too fussed about detailing it too much. I'm now going in, and this is my final layer of shadow. So you can see I've actually turned off the line work at this point, and if after adding this layer of shadow the piece doesn't hold its form, then something has gone wrong. So this layer of shadow is the very deep shadow, the stuff where very little light is reaching it at all, and it really helps break up the form, adds a lot of depth to the fur, and into these little nooks and crannies. You'll see that it really makes them pop out a bit. So now I'm working on some of the gold features of this particular character. Again, this is all on that same multiply layer, the deep shadows, which again I used the same kind of technique. I just selected that local color of the shadow this time and desaturated that. but as I was saying, I work on all the aspects which are in the deep background or deep shadow, and things like starting to detail things like the gold and stuff, because the difference between light and dark on metal things is very noticeable. It's very defined. You'll have a sudden break between dark and light. So using that dark shadow area to start really bringing that in it's a good time to start doing that, I find. Again, I think I started detailing his braids at this point in the same kind of way. So with the beads and his braids, started really kind of trying to accentuate them a little bit more. You'll notice with the Persian cat, the mage character, I've added a lot of green light to his head and around his arm. So that was a secondary light source that I was using in this piece. So it's a main light source, but it's a secondary light source as well. I used quite a lot of light sources in this, I realised as I was going on, and I really like the challenge of using lots of different light sources in it. But it did make it a bit more complicated as I was working on it. So trying to work out exactly which bits would be being hit by which light and what colour they would go was a bit of a challenge at times, and I think I got it wrong in several places, which I'll point out as we go on. But here again, adding in that detailing, you can see that stippling effect that I was talking about, just trying to bring in some larger shadows, some much larger cast shadows in the back of this character, and that worked out again quite. So you can see one of the areas I'm talking about, where the light went wrong, is in the mouth of that blue dragon. I've got the light on one side under its tongue and not on the other. I think I should have used it on both. That was me trying to fix up the Warhammer a bit. Still not happy with that. I come back to it again later, I think. What I'm doing at the moment, because I work on so many layers, when I get to a certain point I collapse them all down into one layer. Around the areas where I've been using the multiply layer, you get this overlap, which Photoshop, when you collapse them down into one layer, just doesn't quite sit comfortably, and it kind of turns really, you get that the color as if it's not multiplied, and it kind of looks rubbish. So I had to go around and delete it all. Here I am working on the background now, so this is the final background. Used a grass brush, which I think is default in Photoshop. I don't remember getting it from anywhere else, but it works really well. So I've changed it to a color dodge layer to get the lighter areas, and then I've turned it to a multiply to get some of the shadows in the grass as well, and just switched up the colors so the grass was the grass in the back was blue, and then in the middle was green, and the front was yellow. Now I'm working on the fire. It's all moving very quickly. Working on the fire. So just selected that area, I've painted it orange, gone through, added lighter areas to it, and then used a color dodge to really heat it up and push that saturation right forwards. You can see the major staff is being brought out, and this is me working on the sword now. So you can see that's after I did that little bit of research just to see how fire would gleam off of it, and that's worked really well. I'm really happy with how the blade of the sword worked out, not so much the hilt, because I forgot about it. So I played around with the idea of adding some photo textures. These are some elephant skin textures that I got from Aaron Blaze, but I very quickly abandoned that idea. Didn't like it, so I just went with the painted texture. Moved on to the eyes. Eyes are the very last thing that I do usually, because they add so much character to a piece. I really like them to come in right at the end, so that they can really start bringing everything together and make things really come alive. This guy's eye I really liked. This one, again, I really liked. It has a lot of light coming off of it in the final pass on it, and so you can't see some of the detail, which is a shame. But I really liked the effect that it had at the end, because it gave it a really glossy feel. So now I'm going through, I've blurred out some of the areas of the background and some of the foreground, so it draws focus into the center. I've added a grime layer over the top, which is something I really like to do. I really like the effect that it has on the overall piece. And that's it. This is the final piece as it came out. I hope you've enjoyed this this sort of breakdown and discussion video, and my commentary hasn't been too muddled. I've tried the best I can. If you've enjoyed it, please let me know. Give me a comment down below. If there's anything that I glossed over too quickly for you, or you'd like me to go into further depth, let me know. If this is a style of video that you want to see more on the channel, also let me know. Until next time, anyway guys, hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you then.